holding down the fort in my absence on Friday night.
I tried, you know, I was like...
I mean, kudos to you.
Thanks, man.
As you know, there's a lot of moving parts involved in this.
Much.
There's a lot going on, so
yes.
you crushed it. Not only did Tony P do the live zone primetime solo, he did Do You Like It or Not at 7:30 solo as well.
Now, Vernon Miles came in for us a little bit, too. He was great.
Crushed it.
He was awesome, too.
Vernon, always a good time. Thank you so much for joining us for the Live Zone Primetime here on this Monday night, whether you're watching on Fox Local or now that I have it going, if you're watching on the Fox 5 live stream. Right now, Anna Klaga, I don't know if I'm saying that right, says, hi, I'm watching from Southeast Washington, D.C.
Hello.
Anna, thank you so much for
watching
Southeast. From Southeast D.C. on our YouTube live stream. I'm glad I got that up and running so that you were able to tune in. Tony P., it is March 2nd. There's a little old saying about the month of March. They say, and I don't know who says this. I don't know where this came from. Maybe it was our meteorologist, but they say that March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. And this March...
At the Ides of March? Is that kind of like...
That's a little later.
Oh, okay.
But this March absolutely lived up to that because despite the fact that it's technically meteorological spring, we had snow again.
Oh, we sure did. After a lot of great weather on the weekend.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, Friday was absolutely gorgeous.
Saturday
was even
Sunday
better.
Was good.
Sunday wasn't too shabby at
all.
No,
it wasn't. I had a quarter zip on. Okay, very
Tony
nice,
P and the
very spring style. Okay,
Tony P
and I felt great.
Zips.
You know, I went to the Ari Spears show Sunday night in my quarter zip, and then the minute we walked out of the Ari Spears show, it was like getting cold.
It was getting a lot cooler out for sure. And then this is what it looked like all across the region today. You see the snowflakes falling from our Fox 5 photographer cruising around the Beltway, it looks like. This was the scene as well in D.C. You see those snowflakes falling as well. Winter weather advisories are actually set to take effect for most of the region at 10 o'clock tonight. They're going to run through the morning commute. Now, D.C. itself is actually not included in this advisory, according to Fox 5's Mike Thomas. Crews were out and about, although around the region today, treating the roads in anticipation of this snow and any potential freezing rain that moves in tonight. Obviously, anytime you talk freezing rain or ice, that's when those alarm bells goes off. The biggest concern, like I said, are for the threat of freezing rain and ice during the morning commute, which could mean slippery conditions. Tony P., some schools have already announced delays, including Fairfax, Fauquier, and Loudoun County Public Schools. They're going to open a little late, just in case. Prince George's County Schools actually initially announced the delay. Then they wrote a little later, reversing course, telling parents they would make a final call in the morning instead. Mike Thomas, like I said, he's going to have an update on the forecast at the top of the hour.
Mike and I had we made up on Friday night. We made up on Friday night because of this beautiful weather we had, and he said it's going to be okay. It's going to be in the 70s in a week from that Friday.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing
what's
too.
This?
It's supposed to be, we're going to feel real spring-like coming up here by the end of the week.
This is finicky weather, my friend. This is like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's something going on. Like maybe Mother Nature's angry at us for some reason. I don't know what's going on. What do we do?
Old man
Mother Nature, old man winter, okay?
Possibly.
Get together, figure out what's going on. I know there's a fight going on between the two of them, but please, let's get on the same page so that we don't have to
Tony
have
P., are you ready for
like
spring? Are you
yes,
team
because I want to
spring at this
golf,
point?
man. I want to
Yeah,
golf.
he wants to go out and golf. Have you gotten out recently?
No, because I just, weekends, come up. I'm, doing housekeeping stuff.
Busy man.
Have a couple things with friends, my partner, of course, and all that stuff. And I can't fit it in right now. But I'm going to Florida later this week, so I'll probably get down and play a little bit there. We'll see.
Okay, that's what he's waiting for.
I want what's the Kokomo? A little bit of Beach Boys. I kind of want that feeling of Kokomo, even though it's going to be in the 70s when I'm down there. Yeah. So the irony is, I should have left last week, but overall,
because it's probably going to be warmer here than it is there.
But you know what though? The grass is still going to look nice in Florida. So you know what?
It's going to look
and I just love Florida
nice.
Generally. So you know what? I'll take it. No matter what I can get. It's still cold somewhere. It's cold in Boston.
Yeah, I was saying to Brittany Alexandra earlier tonight, though.
Yeah.
I specifically remember this would have been going back a decade ago or more. We were launching Good Day at 10 a.m. We were expanding. We had already done the 9 a.m.
Yeah.
This was when we were expanding to 10 a.m. So keep in mind. Yeah. Now we've got an 11 a.m. We've got a noon
Marissa Mitchell show. We got everything.
Exactly. So this is going back years and years and years. But we were launching the 10A. We had been working on it. I was going to be the producer of both hours, 9 and 10. It was this big undertaking. I got called for jury duty. I was getting called for jury duty, and I was supposed to go the same day the show was going to launch. That day was March 17th. We were going to launch. Good day at 10 a.m. I believe this was the date, but it was March 17th. I had jury duty, and it snowed, and my jury duty got canceled because it snowed, and so the courts were closed. So March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, the latest I remember it snowing around the DMV, but that means we still have a little more than 2 weeks.
Knock on that wood or whatever this is. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I mean, I think about it, and again, I'm from the Boston area, so this is very normal. But when I've been here for 3 years now, and I've seen what weather is like, it never gets to this point, ever. Just at least in my opinion. I mean, seeing how this is, people playing golf on Sunday and Saturday. And then I'm watching this. And I'll tell you, I'll take a call from my office today watching the snowfall. I go, what am I doing here?
I was joking with my wife that, you know, my 8-week-old daughter hasn't seen more snow in the D.C. region than like most people see in years.
In like a lifetime.
Anna says, my grandfather used to say that. March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. We're keeping our fingers crossed that is the case here.
Yes, please.
West Virginia Ben says, this is why Obama called us weather wimps.
Is that what he said?
He did call us weather wimps. And you know what? We deserved it. He was from Chicago.
No, he does. No, he deserved it.
More serious.
It's awful in Chicago.
And they do a much better job there. Like I said, though, Mike Thomas, he'll have the latest.
I want my tan suit
on
again.
that forecast.
So I can wear it.
Any delays that come into the newsroom, of course, we will bring them to you.
Yes, sir.
In the meantime. All right. We do need to move on, though, to our other big story.
Yeah, pretty big one.
A huge one. Operation Epic Fury, the military mission in Iran, entering its third day today. Obviously, they are hours ahead of us over there, so entering day 4 tonight. We did learn that the U.S. death toll has increased from 4 to 6, and the State Department is now urging U.S. citizens to leave more than a dozen Middle Eastern countries due to safety risks. Earlier today, for the first time, though, the Commander-in-Chief laid out his detailed objectives for the massive military campaign. Speaking during a Medal of Honor ceremony, President Trump said the 4 objectives of the military campaign are, first, destroying Iran's missile program. Second, annihilating Iran's navy. Third, stopping Iran from having nuclear weapons. And fourth, stopping Iran from sponsoring terrorism. Take a listen.
An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat to the Middle East, but also to the American people. Our country itself would be under threat, and it was very nearly under threat. I was very proud to have knocked out.
So President Trump said today the United States is prepared to carry out its operations over the course of the next 4 to 5 weeks, but he also warned it could go longer. He also said those military objectives will intensify. The president also asked Americans to remember the U.S. service members who have been killed since the start of Operation Epic Fury. The president said they are heroic Americans, and he asked the nation to pray for their families. Now, at the same time, Tony P., we have seen protests against the U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran across the country and right here in D.C. The latest one actually got underway around 7 tonight near Lafayette Square, right across from the White House. Similar protests took place here over the weekend. That's the video you're looking at right now. Demonstrators held signs and chanted, many calling for an end to military action. Some told Fox 5 they believe the recent strikes on Iran will only lead to more casualties. At the same time, though, we've also seen rallies organized by some Iranian Americans who support a change in Iran's government. Participants at those rallies say they hope the recent strikes could lead to that. So obviously, this story continues to evolve, Tony P. And
there's a lot of things in the balance, because you have a lot of Americans that are, have crying no tears for the Ayatollah in his demise.
Correct.
But you also have people who are so supportive of the Iranians taking control of their country and getting their government back after 47 years. But you also have a lot of individuals, especially millennial generations and Gen Xers, that were here during the Iraq War and Operation Iraqi Freedom, and what that led to, and the endless wars. People are not excited for that at all. They don't want to see it happen. So I think a lot of Americans are carrying 2 feelings at once here, Chris.
No question about that. Fox 5's Regina Ureta was down at that latest protest. She will have an update on that and hear from some of the people who were there coming up on Fox 5 News at 10 and 11 right here on Fox Local. In the meantime, though, for more on the military action, the impact back here at home on Wall Street, the oil markets, we have a team of experts. Molly Smith is a Democratic strategist. Alex Edkarian is a political strategist and economic analyst. They both join us now live. Alex, we'll check in with you in just a minute, but we do want to start with Molly and the president's 4 objectives that we heard him lay out. Molly, do you think those are feasible in the time period that he outlined?
I mean, we'll certainly see. It was interesting to me that one of the objectives he didn't state was regime change. And we had previously President Trump saying that one of the main reasons he was taking this action was to overthrow the Iranian government. I certainly think it's possible to degrade their Navy, to take out a lot of their ballistic missile capabilities, and to further destroy their nuclear program. I think the question most Americans would have, though, if we do all that and we're unable to remove the regime, or if we do all that and we remove the regime, but it causes chaos on the ground and we create a lot of regional instability, is that worth the cost? Because as you guys noted, unfortunately, we already have 6 Americans dead, and the Trump administration pretty flippantly said there's going to be more, and it's already cost a few $1 billion, and we know that's only going to go up. So Americans will ask, is even accomplishing those objectives worth the cost?
Within the Democratic Party, what do you feel is the overall position on this war? Again, there are some party dividing lines on the fact that no one is crying tears for the Ayatollah and his demise, but there's also the anti-war coalition versus some that are more conservative in the Democratic Party on war. What is the position that you're seeing inside the party tonight, as well as their response overall to this war?
Yeah, most polling, all Democrats pretty much, or not all Democrats, but a majority of Democrats support or do not support this war, and support Democrats taking kind of a hard line and arguing against it. But there is that balance, Tony, as you were saying, because no one's crying tears for the Ayatollah. He was a terrible man and he led a repressive government, and Iran is a terrible actor within the Middle East. They fund terrorism, they create regional instability. So I think what you're seeing here is Democrats towing that line of saying, just because the Ayatollah was a terrible person and Iran causes these regional problems, that doesn't necessarily mean we should be taking military action now, because the military action is costly. It costs us men and women. It costs us money. And getting rid of him, you could cause regional instability. I think the Trump administration is a little bit too optimistic, because the Venezuela operation, we were able to get in there, take the Maduro, and they were able to replace him with another leader. This we're seeing is much more difficult because, A, we haven't identified some leader within there who will take over and start working with us. And B, the Middle East region is just much, I wouldn't say it's much more complex, but it is incredibly complex. And I just don't think this is going to be as easy as Venezuela was.
You mentioned the majority of Democrats opposing this military action. Do they have any ability to put any checks on the president's power when it comes to this military action?
Yeah, so Democrats, along with a few Republicans like Congressman Thomas Massie, are pushing to have a war resolutions vote to try to kind of clip this, or at least express their disapproval. From all the reporting I've seen is that that vote will fail. They're not going to be able to pass a disapproval of this action. So I think their ability to curtail the Trump administration really is purely political, and trying to communicate with the American people that this isn't the correct course of action, and hope that if we win the midterms, we can then provide oversight and potentially pass a war resolutions vote.
With this situation with Iran, when it comes to the nuclear capabilities and ballistic missiles, if Democrats are in power or were in power during this moment, what do you think would have been the Democratic response from a Democratic president or a Democratic Congress in this situation? Because again, Iran is a problem, and they have been for a long, long time. And that's one of the responses that you'll see from many Iranian Americans, as well as more on the conservative side, would say, hey, this is a problem that needs to be dealt with. How do you think Democrats would have solved it differently?
Yeah, I think the issue you have here is that a lot of Democrats would argue that this was a war of choice. From most of the analysts say here that Iran, even though they were increasing their nuclear capabilities, they weren't within 6 months to a year of being able to create a bomb. So we had a large time frame there to potentially deal with it, and we could have taken military action if they started to take serious efforts to try to create a bomb. The second thing is that the Trump administration has said that they have the capabilities to strike the United States, and that's why we had to take action. But that's simply not true. The Department of Defense says, their own experts say, no, no, Iran does not have the ability to strike the United States with ballistic missiles. So I think you would have Democrats not rushing into war because the imminent threats that the Trump administration have been touting are not real. I think what you would have them say, too, is that we had a nuclear deal under Obama that provided for international inspections that was preventing preventing Iran from building a bomb, and then Trump ripped it up. I think a Democratic president could try to rebuild that coalition and reinstitute another nuclear deal that provided inspections and prevented Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Now, one of the biggest, I think, issue points for Democrats in the last 10 to 15 years was the response to the Iraq War. A lot of Democrats voted for it when President Bush was in power, for Operation Iraqi Freedom, and that has hurt a lot of Democrats in presidential primaries, etc. What do you think Democrats today can learn from that experience in 2003 with the Iraq War and others to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes as their voters say this time?
Yeah, I think the thing is they have to not be scared to have the argument and to forcefully say why this is a war of choice and that this is not strategically the correct option. Ever since 9/11, you've had Democrats worry that if they talk against a foreign military action that they're going to be painted as weak or un-American. You already see it with Republicans trying to make the argument just because you oppose this war means you're somehow pro-Iran or pro the Ayatollah. But what we're seeing is Americans don't buy that, and being against this war puts Democrats firmly in the majority of public opinion. For the exception of one poll by Insider Advantage, all the polls I've seen show Americans disapprove of the war. And that's stunning because usually when a war happens, the first polls, there's a kind of a rally around the flag effect where the majority of Americans support the war. Well, right out of the gate, even before we had extensive reporting on lost lives and reporting on how much this is costing us, we see that it's unpopular. So I think that is something that Democrats can really hold on to. And then lastly, I'd say, is to make the contrast argument about priorities. While the Trump administration is funding billions of dollars to bomb countries overseas, they cut $1 trillion from Medicaid. Most Americans, when they voted for America First, did not think that meant cutting $1 trillion from Americans' health care while spending billions of dollars to create new foreign wars that they explicitly campaigned against.
All right, Democratic strategist Molly Smith, thank you so much.
Thank
we
you.
do want to turn now to Alex Abkarian, political strategist and economic analyst. And Alex, obviously one of the big things people have been focused on is the impact that this can have not only on Wall Street, but oil prices, gas prices here at home. How did Wall Street react today?
Well, not so much positively. Look, anytime there isn't a missile against a country that is rich with oil, but more specifically, that controls 20% of the distribution channel, what we typically see is that oil reacts first, and then the market experiences a little bit more volatility, and at the same time, you see a little bit more flight to safety towards safe haven assets. So since the escalation from Friday night, we started seeing that. I mean, keep in mind, this is not the midnight hammer operation where we're going to go in and out one day. Back then, that was not that big of a deal. The market didn't overreact to that. But when you see Iran retaliate, and earlier we talked about how Iranian missiles will not hit the U.S. Let's not forget they just hit the U.S. embassy in Saudi Arabia. They're attacking American citizens. Now, all of that, when Iran says no more red lines, we're going to go ahead and attack multiple different countries simultaneously, what that does is just increases the overall escalation, and with that, we see volatility. So don't be surprised when you start seeing oil prices go up. What does that mean to us here? Yes, the Trump administration has the pump, baby pump, 3 million barrels a day to lower the cost of gas and as a result, lowered the inflation headline numbers from 9.1 under Biden to 2.4. But we could potentially see gas prices increase. Some places in the country might pay $5, $6, $7, $8, but time will tell. Hopefully it won't take longer than that. It won't be another Iraq or Afghanistan, but it looks like President Trump is very strategic and is talking about 4 to 5 weeks.
Do you think that these potential oil price shifts could be kind of set in for a while, depending on how long this battle goes in terms of, like, kind of, I know Iran was mentioning supply chain issues, we're going to hold the oil back. Could that have longer term implications beyond that 4 to 5 weeks? Or do you see it once this battle or war ends, the oil prices start to go down again?
It's one thing to attack the distribution part of the supply chain, and it's another thing to attack the actual sites that are actually extracting the oil. See, it's beyond just oil. Because if you think about Venezuela and if you think about Iran, the main buyer of their oil has been China. So for us, as we've been trying to take control over the Western Hemisphere in South America to try to push out Chinese influence, and at the same time have a lot more control, specifically to maintain that the oil is denominated with dollar as opposed to these bilateral trade agreements and other payment methods. It all depends on how long it's going to last and what sites are going to be hit. Because just the other day, Iran hit Saudi Arabia's production place. So they're not about controlling 20% of the export from Hormuz. And another thing to keep in mind, this morning we had 10 naval Iranian ships sink, and then later on in the afternoon we added one. So as we continue to de-escalate their naval control, they might not have full control over that Hormuz distribution channel. Time will tell, but in the next 2-3 weeks, one thing's for sure, different parts of the country, different parts of the world are rushing to have enough oil, and that whenever the consumer feels the pain, they would proactively prepare and spike the demand and put a lot more pressure on the available supply.
So you mentioned China, you mentioned the drone attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia. Are there fears of this spreading, and what impact will that have on global economies if that's the case as well?
See, worst case scenario is any other countries getting involved. Now, Russia's busy with Ukraine. China's making some claims, but we don't see major geopolitical escalation. The Arab countries are not united against Israel or the U.S. As a matter of fact, they're opening and they're allowing U.S. to actually use their location to further attack Iran. So the way I see this play out is it all depends on how long Iran is going to retaliate. You see some effects in Lebanon, Beirut. Hezbollah had some awakening and they started attacking. Here in Texas, we had someone being influenced by the ideology and have the sleeper attack. But what is evident is that in multiple communication, Iran is retaliating, and they're also communicating with other countries that we are not going to stand still and just take the hits. So it all depends on how far they're going to get. But when they say that there's no more red lines, that means whatever's within their reach, they might go after civilians, they might go after hospitals. It's not about just military bases. They might even attack the oil production of other countries just to make a point across. But as that escalation increases, we will see the impact of that and volatility will escalate. Sometimes you have the short-term noise and sometimes you have the main signal. Right now, when both parties are basically saying we're going to continue at this, that means we don't see a resolution in the short term. Do expect higher prices of oil. do expect volatility and do expect that money moves towards safety.
When looking at this from an economic perspective, and the president talked about things such as protecting America from potential ballistic missiles and the nuclear capability, if there's an economic justification for this Operation Epic Fury and future actions in the future against Iran, what would be that economic justification in a long-term sense?
I mean, think about it this way. When you buy life insurance, you're not hoping for the person that is buying life insurance to die so that way their beneficiary benefits. When you have the world reserve currency, which is the US dollar, you want to be able to protect that. When you have regions where other countries are taking influence, like China attracted Iran to be part of the BRICS Plus nation, and they're having these bilateral trade agreements and bypassing the US dollar. So this is not about just military or their nuclear power plant. It's way more than that, because they're getting bigger, they're getting worse, and that will make a big problem for us. See, the best time to deal with a problem is before it actually becomes a bigger problem. So when you ask me about how to quantify this, I mean, think about it. If they were to attack, think about 9/11. How drastic was that? That was a black swan event. The market was shut down for a few days. We lost lives, we lost many, many different things, and it took us a while to even recover from that. And as a result, we had new government regulation from the US Patriot Act and so many different other regulations. So the way I would see this is sometimes you're taking an action to avoid the worst case scenario, but at the same time, let's call a spade a spade. This is going to cost us billions and billions of dollars. So dollars going to have to be printed. The value of our currency is going to drop. And at the same time, you see gold and commodities, assets that cannot be duplicated, also increase in value. So it's difficult to put a specific dollar amount, but when we're making billions of dollars in investment, what we're trying to avoid is trillions of dollars of disasters down the line.
Right. And when looking, so there's been some reporting, over the weekend that Saudi Arabia was talking to President Trump and potentially encouraging him to make this move. With that knowledge of how, again, we're seeing the Arab nations are sort of in line with this, is there a benefit to them politically and economically, and what does that look like in this battle with Iran?
Look, Saudi Arabia made the trillions of commitment to President Trump in terms of benefiting from the AI boom, along with having more investment back and forth, because Saudi Arabia is predominantly oil dependent. But then you look at Dubai, for example, how in the last 10 years they changed their economy in terms of being just oil exports. They actually have a lot of people that are living there, from tax policies to creating a place that is safe, pro-investment, pro-growth, and pro-businesses. So what Saudi is trying to do is they're thinking about their 2030, 2035 policy, where how do we change and become the dominant within that region? Well, one way to do that, people that are near you that are causing some problems, they have to get weaker so that way they don't become threat to you. So in the past 2-3 weeks, the Arab nation at first did not want the idea of this escalated war. But then all of a sudden, it became evident that during these negotiations, part of it was not a fair and honest negotiation towards a resolution. It was more of a, everyone had a very much of a hard line. So who's going to benefit? You got to ask that question. Israel benefits. We'll have a little bit more peace in the region. Syria would benefit. Saudi Arabia would benefit. Jordan would benefit. Egypt would benefit. So if you think about the strategic geopolitical play, all the countries that were part of the peace agreement that President Trump put together, where what they're trying to do is they're trying to make investment. We have not seen peace agreements through economic deals. This is modern day deal making with President Trump, where at the end of the day, some of the people with money, with decision and power, are thinking about what is the long-term and benefit to my own country. So every country right there in that region, although from a religion perspective, are somewhat close, but at the end of the day, everyone's protecting their own turf and everyone's looking out for what's best for them.
All right. Political strategist and economic analyst Alex Abkarian, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the Live Zone Primetime and lending your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. It's 9:30 exactly, taking a live look
On
from
the
our
dot.
Skycam in Leonardtown, Maryland. Looks wet. Hopefully it stays
The whole area is looking that way right now.
not icy is the goal. When we come back, Tony P is going to talk about some of the other stories he's been keeping an eye on this Monday evening. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime on this Monday evening. It is now 9:32. That means it's time to find out what else Tony P's been keeping an eye on.
What am I watching around this country
and
around the world, my friends? And we're going to start right here in the U.S. It's tied, of course, to the war in Iran. Federal law enforcement officials placed major U.S. cities on heightened alert today amid escalating tensions with Iran. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security increased coordination with local authorities in New York, here in Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and other major metropolitan areas. Officials cited concerns about potential retaliatory attacks or lone actor threats tied to the broader U.S.-Iran war. While no specific plot was announced at all, security presence around transit hubs has been increased, and government buildings and large public events also will have more security personnel from local and federal officials. In Texas, investigators are continuing to examine the deadly mass shooting in downtown Austin this weekend. The attack began just before 2 a.m. along West 6th Street outside Buford's Bar on Sunday, and authorities confirmed 2 people were killed and 14 others were injured. Police fatally shot the suspect at the scene, and victims were identified as 19-year-old Ryder Harrington, a Texas Tech University student, and 21-year-old Savitha Shan, a University of Texas student. Law enforcement said the suspect wore tactical-style gear and a shirt with Middle Eastern imagery, prompting the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force to assist in determining whether the attack had an ideological or terror motive. Officials said they are reviewing the suspect's digital history, communications, and possible extremist affiliations as the investigation continues. The House Ethics Committee opened a formal investigation into South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace today. The bipartisan panel is reviewing whether Nancy Mace improperly used campaign funds for personal expenses, including travel and lodging not directly tied to her campaign activity. Investigators will examine financial disclosures and sworn testimony as part of the inquiry. Mace has denied wrongdoing and said all expenditures were lawful and properly reported. She is also running for South Carolina's governor as well. Sticking here with Congress, the House Oversight Committee released videos of hours-long depositions from both former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary Hillary Clinton in the ongoing Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Hillary Clinton testified that she did not recall knowing Epstein and denied any involvement in his criminal activity. Bill Clinton, who previously acknowledged flying on Epstein's private jet, told lawmakers in the deposition that he saw nothing that indicated Epstein was abusing underage girls and said their relationship ended years before Epstein's arrest. The release of the records marked one of the most high-profile moments in the congressional probe into Epstein's records. There's also a viral moment, Chris, where Secretary Clinton was responding to the fact that Representative Lauren Boebert took a picture of the actual proceedings when there wasn't any release, and she said, "I will go into contempt and I am no longer continuing this meeting." So it was a very contentious exchange during that deposition. Public health officials warn that stagnant federal funding for HIV services is threatening care for thousands of Americans. The Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, which provides antiretroviral, to make sure I pronounce that right, medications and case management and support services for low-income patients, has seen its budget remain flat at approximately $2.4 billion for several years now, despite rising treatment costs and growing demand. Providers told lawmakers that some states are freezing enrollment, cutting support services, and delaying medications because the fixed funding cannot cover those rising prescription prices or expanded eligibility needs. Health advocates said the situation at the moment, is disproportionately affecting rural and underserved communities and could lead to increased HIV transmission and preventable hospitalizations in the future. On the economic front, U.S. tariff policy has continued to weigh on manufacturing growth. Industry analysts have reported that steel and aluminum tariffs increased import costs for heavy equipment and industrial machinery producers last year. Companies cited supply chain bottlenecks and higher procurement expenses, saying tariff uncertainty has also delayed capital investment and expansion plans. Economists are warning that sustained trade friction could slow hiring and output across key manufacturing sectors. In the world of Hollywood, it was awards season last night at the Actor Awards, where Michael B. Jordan pulled up a notable upset by winning the Actor Award for Lead Male Actor for Sinners, where he played twin characters Smoke and Stack. In his speech, he talked about being the kid from Newark who once imagined being in the rooms he's in now, and he thanked his mother for her dedicated effort and director Ryan Coogler as well. Also at the Actor Awards last night, Catherine O'Hara was honored with a posthumous Actor Award for her work on The Studio, with Seth Rogen, the show's producer and creator, accepting on her behalf. He described her as both brilliant and generous, and he shared that before many shooting days, she would send rewritten versions of scenes that consistently made the show stronger, prompting an emotional standing ovation in the room. And Chris, when looking at that award show last night, whether it was Harrison Ford's beautiful acceptance speech for his Lifetime Achievement Award, tears in my eyes, I gotta tell you. And then, of course, seeing Michael B. Jordan, seeing Delroy Lindo do well last night, the show winning best, not the show, the movie Sinners winning best cast, and just the elation and how excited people were that Sinners is getting the attention it deserves at 16 Oscar nominations. And I have to say, after the horrendous racist incident at the BAFTA Awards that Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo had to go through, I think it's wonderful that they had an incredible weekend at the NAACP Awards, where they were, NAACP Image Awards, where they were honored for their performances, and at the Actor Awards last night for SAG-AFTRA. Just wonderful stuff. Michael B. Jordan is now also in the thick of this Oscars race.
I was just going to say, so who is the front runner now for the Oscar for Best Actor?
It's going to be a tight one, because again, I watched both movies. They give incredible performances. Now, Timothée Chalamet won this award last year at the Actor Awards and then did not win the Oscar.
Correct.
So my thinking is this potentially the same thing happening
Michael
again?
Michael B. Jordan, Timothée Chalamet for Marty Supreme, Leonardo DiCaprio, One Battle After Another, Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent, which could be a dark horse.
Yeah,
he's getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
And then Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon. Here is what I'm afraid could happen.
What's your thought here?
That Michael B. Jordan and Timothée Chalamet could split votes, or Leonardo DiCaprio and Michael B. Jordan could split votes, and someone else sneaks in.
Like a dark horse. Interesting. I don't know how the voting works. I mean, I don't know that that's actually a thing at play. But I think overall, if I were to pick, I would probably go with Michael B. Jordan, just in my view of it, because he played multiple roles. Mm-hmm. That's again, I'm not an acting expert.
There was just an
that's
interview.
The one thing I'm like,
I want to say it was on J HUD. Just one of his co-stars recently gave an interview, and she talked about the lengths to which Michael B. Jordan went, how he gave himself dimples with the way he smiled for one of the characters.
Whoa.
He wore shoes that were too small when he played one of the brothers, and he wore a pair of shoes that were too big when he played the others, to really just kind of give them all of these physical differences type of a thing. And someone on social media was joking that it could be that interview, and people actually grasping how much effort he put into playing these two different roles, that could be what pushes him over the edge.
And the other angle,
that Oscar.
Yeah, the other angle too is, like, again, is Timothée Chalamet do? people felt that he kind of got passed over last year.
He certainly thinks he is, and I think he hurt himself by saying that, because
is that what he said?
Humility goes a long way. He said he has been turning in Oscar caliber roles since day one, and that he deserves it. He's been working his ass off, and to be honest with you, I don't think it made him look so
I
great.
think because again, Michael B. Jordan's speech was incredible. He thanked his mother driving into New York when they could barely afford the parking fee. I mean, he is a wonderful guy. Ryan Coogler, great film. I hope Delroy Lindo.
I want Ryan Coogler to win just because I love hearing him talk.
And Delroy Lindo should mop up at the Oscars.
Well, he deserves
he should win it all.
Career award.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Get Shorty should win an Oscar.
Maryland from Fox 5 Skycam. You still see those lights lit up on Carroll Creek when we come back. Tony P. wants you to go back to work in the office.
Okay.
That was my takeaway from this. We're going to find out why I think that.
But who I interviewed thinks that too. And we all do.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime here on Fox 5, Fox Local, wherever you can find us here on the internet. And so I had a really interesting opportunity recently to talk about one of my favorite topics, going back to the office, Chris, and the rise of co-working spaces once again post-COVID, okay?
Okay, if you follow Tony P on social media, you know this man loves his office.
Yes, I do.
Let me just preface
What's wrong with that, okay?
There's nothing wrong with that.
And by the way, you're going to find out why in this interview that I did with a local co-working space and private office company, district offices here in D.C., and I also am a proud customer of theirs, okay? I love being in that space. They talked to me about why co-working spaces are on the rise in 2026 and what it means for future office behavior for individual entrepreneurs and for major companies like Amazon.
Let's check it out.
Well, I have to tell you, one of my favorite trends that is coming back is people going back to the office, but not in the way you'd expect, my friends. One of the things we have seen from the post-pandemic era has been the rise of co-working. It went down a little bit in 2022, 2023, but it's making a comeback according to the Wall Street Journal in so many ways. Not just co-working, but entrepreneurs and major companies renting out spaces throughout the country to bring people back to the office in many easy ways. And we have some great guests tonight to talk about this and break it down for us. We have Angie O'Grady, Natalie DeHart, and Mildred Antonetti from District Offices, a local co-working and commercial office space provider right here in D.C. They know all about these trends. They've been seeing it. And thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Live Zone Primetime, all of you, to help us break this down.
Thanks for having us.
So let me ask you all this. So we're seeing this trend. The Wall Street Journal has multiple articles out saying co-working is back, right? We're seeing more people come back to the office, and even companies like Amazon and Microsoft are no longer taking these long-term leases for whole office buildings. They're doing co-working, they're doing smaller options. What do you attribute this, Angie, to this rise in this new use of co-working and the resurgence of co-working generally?
So I think when COVID happened, we all had this narrative in our head that the traditional office would die. Well, it's not really what's happening. What we're seeing is that the office environment is actually evolving and maturing. And some of these big enterprises are realizing the value of an office that's flexible, that's turnkey, where there's no capital investment. And many times it's closer to the homes of the people that they're trying to attract to work for them. So all of those things combined make it a really good option for these bigger players as well as your smaller entrepreneurs.
And Natalie and Mildred, what do you attribute the evolution to? What are some of the things that you're seeing from your perspective of how these offices, including yours, are evolving to meet these needs?
I would say we do tailor a lot of our offering towards, helping people and supporting them, being able to bring like a whole workforce into, one of our spaces. So I would say, we definitely work on that a lot to make that happen. Angie, feel free to jump in here, but I would say that is basically what separates us and sets us apart.
Are you also seeing this whole rise? We're seeing entrepreneurs, for example, right? Those are major people. They're building startups. They're working independently. Maybe they work for a company, but they can't come into the office because they're not in the right location. Are you seeing a lot of entrepreneurs do this as well? And if so, what is the reason why they're coming back to the office?
Yeah, we are seeing a good amount of entrepreneurs come in. I would say it's pretty 50-50 when it comes to like businesses, consulting, whether it be larger companies or entrepreneurs. A lot of times it's to help with outsourcing other operational needs. So a lot of entrepreneurs, if you're just kind of starting a business, you have a startup, you don't necessarily want to have to then hire out for reception needs or fixing the coffee machine and things like that. So being able to come to a co-working space, you're kind of able to have a professional address, get all your mailing handled, get all your reception needs handled as well. And so you can just kind of focus on starting your business and getting to work.
And Angie, let me ask you this. What is the psychology that changes in people when they decide to go to a co-working space as opposed to staying remote? As we heard for years, remote work is fine. People can stay home. They don't need a physical office. What happens to their productivity when they go into a co-working space like yours?
I think the best part of having a co-working space is, one, you have that place to go. It's that routine of getting up, going to the office, and hopefully it's close to your home, so there's not a long commute involved. And then when you're there, you have other people. They may not work in your same sector. They certainly aren't working for your company, perhaps, but there are people that you can engage with that provide you with a level of energy, somebody to brainstorm with. Lots of times you find that somebody, two people every morning, they'll sit and have a cup of coffee just to start their day, to brainstorm, say good morning. And that really kicks off your day, helps you, bounce ideas off of somebody else, and really creates that sense of community. And then I think also, most importantly, when we go home, we're home. We can flip it off.
Yeah.
We can then say, all right, I'm home. Whereas when you're working at home in your bedroom or maybe in a private office at your home, you're still always living at work.
Yeah.
And sometimes it makes it really hard to draw that distinction. And having a really great co-working space makes all the difference.
Well, the line becomes blurred, exactly, but you kind of don't know where work ends and life begins. That's a great point. That's why I've done it over the years, because I just don't want to be stuck in my house. Now, Mildred and Natalie, let me ask you this one. So when people do decide to make that move and come in, for example, they may be having a private office, or they may be doing co-working. They may not know people, for example, to make those automatic connections. How would you suggest anybody that's going to start their co-working or their private office journey, how should they come into a space like yours and try to build those connections and leverage the resources that you all put out there?
Well, we do, first of all, we do host a lot of, community events. every week, even definitely a couple times a month, where, yes, they're not your colleagues directly, they don't work in the same company that you do, but, you can still make those connections. I would say make the best use out of the space, go grab your coffee in the morning, maybe have your breakfast in the community cafe, or, definitely participate in all these events, which we host for that, so that people can also build, strong relationships. Maybe it's not with your colleague directly, but it can turn into something, further down the line.
Right. And let me ask you this, Angie. So when looking at the decision between going with co-working, say an entrepreneur, or you're someone who's working for a company, and you have a budget, for example, how do you decide between co-working and a private office? What are some of the considerations that buyers, employees, and employers should make when they decide to make that decision?
Great question. So, co-working is ideal for a professional who's working remotely but wants access to that private environment. They're comfortable sitting in an open space. They're comfortable, having people hear their conversations, and probably, isn't someone that's on a Zoom call all day long, right? Whereas a private office is going to really work for that person that needs their own office, needs the privacy, needs a place where they can shut their door. And then also a really important consideration here in the Washington, D.C. area is if you're trying to qualify for your CBE or SAM.gov, getting on the SAM GSA schedule, those requirements many times say that you have to have a private office that is yours with a door that locks. And in that case, even a very small private office will check that box.
I didn't know that. So a little follow-up. So in terms of the security measures, are there certain things that buyers should be paying attention to when it comes to internet security or physical security when they're choosing a private office or a co-working space provider?
Absolutely. I'll jump on that one. So what I like to tell people is that we have made an extraordinary investment in our infrastructure on the technology side.
Nice.
It's, not a public coffee shop. You are behind your own VLAN. None of our other clients can see your files or what you're doing. So it's very secure, and we've taken great measures to ensure that, so that our clients, you could have a direct competitor sitting in our suite and it wouldn't matter. There would be no question about someone being able to see, what you're up to, who you're talking to, your emails, et cetera.
And you, Mildred and Natalie, you mentioned before about the certain offshoring or outsourcing items that entrepreneurs and companies are utilizing. What are some of the most popular items beyond just the physical space that your buyers and customers are utilizing to maybe have a hybrid experience, for example, but still have the ability to offshore those items?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I definitely think our mailing feature is a really big thing that a lot of clients utilize here. So depending on the needs of your business, you can either set up when you have an agreement with us. We can be really flexible and tailor ourselves to your needs. So whether that be you get notified of each letter that comes addressed to you every single day, we can do that upon arrival. And then from there, they can ask us, hey, can you scan that over to me, or can you forward it to this address? Yeah. And we're able to do that instantaneously. And then also if businesses kind of like more of a schedule, more of a routine of when to expect our email, we can also set that up to only do it maybe once a week or twice a week if you don't need a bunch of emails flooding your inbox. And so that's also something that a lot of clients, our virtual clients as well, really utilize.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I would even add on to that our conference rooms. A lot of people, maybe they don't even have an office. Maybe they just have mail services that Natalie just mentioned, but have the impression, give their clients the impression that they do have an office where they meet. You can book our conference rooms on an hourly basis, the full day, the full week, however you need them really. And that, that really does help that as well.
So Angie, my final questions are going to be more about just any advice you have for first-time individuals that are trying this journey, right? So if there's someone out there that's getting ready to start, what is one of the biggest mistakes you've seen others make when they first decide to have a co-working or a private office that you would want other people to not repeat in the future so that they can have the best experience?
I think you have to be careful, especially if you're in a private office, that you don't show up in a co-working space, walk to your office, shut the door, and sit there in isolation. You're not helping yourself in terms of the opportunity to interact with others. I think also really talking to the community manager, letting that community manager learn what's important to you. How can we help you? Who can we connect you with? What can we do? Because we know our clients and we're happy to connect you to anybody that we, have in this space that would be beneficial to you. I think of it like a networking membership to the chamber or something, right?
Yeah.
You get out of it what you put into it. So, being intentional about getting up from your desk every hour to walk around, have a cup of coffee, saying hi to somebody new. Co-working spaces are full of friendly people. They want to talk to people. That's why they're here. So there's nothing wrong with just introducing yourself. I'm new, or, I don't think I've met you. How are you? So utilize those resources that are at your fingertips for sure.
I love that. And for each of you, what is one trend that you're seeing in 2026 that's new, that you think is going to continue throughout co-working and just the future of work generally? And Angie, we can start with you if you want.
They're thinking. So I think we're seeing that, work is a place that you want to come, right? It's a place that you can collaborate, interact with others, and that the traditional 8:30 to 5:30 hours are not set in stone like they once were, right? I had a father that worked for the U.S. government. He went to work every day from 8:30 to 5:30. We're not seeing that so much anymore. It's becoming a lot more flexible and fluid based on how you best work. Like if you're somebody like me that likes to get up at dark 30 and be at the office by 7, you can now do that because you could be productive.
And Natalie and Mildred, any trends that you're seeing that are going to continue, or new ones that are going to continue?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to how you opened it up. I think there's a big, almost like rebound trend of people actually wanting to have that separate of, work life versus home life.
Yeah.
So as much as probably, 5-7 years ago, there was that trend of working from home and working remote. I think right now the pendulum is kind of swinging back, and there's a really big drive and desire to go into a place and have colleagues at work and kind of have that environment.
Yeah. And we're also seeing a lot of, instead of getting a big office for all of your 10 employees and everybody will have their dedicated desk and that's their workstation, much like what a cubicle would have been. They're being set up I would say in a funner way, where it's a big shared office. Maybe they set up 6 desks and then the other area is more like a lounge area. And then they kind of take turns, even as to how many times somebody comes into the office during that week, or who will use that fun desk in the corner that week or that day, or who gets to work out of the couch type of thing. So even that, small things like that, but they do amount to a difference.
And Angie, my final question for you. So in 5 years from now, what do you see the future office looking like?
I think the future office is going to have a lot more co-working as part of it. I've worked in the sector long enough where, you used to sort of hide behind the fact that you were in a co-working space. And now you're proud when you're in a co-working space. It says, I'm smart, I'm being conscientious about the dollars that I'm spending, and I'm being flexible so I can let my business grow as it needs to. So I think more and more enterprises are going to embrace co-working and all of the extreme advantages that it offers. And I think we will see more and more co-working spaces closer to people's homes, because that's the real advantage there. It helps organizations attract that talent. Yeah. And we all know how hard it is to attract the great talent that we all have, Mildred and Natalie included. So I think those are some of the things that we will see.
I love that, because as someone who is really an old soul, I love the people just getting back to the office and meeting each other, especially for Gen Z. That is so important, and younger generations, to get in touch with each other and learn and create just a fascinating conversation about an important issue affecting all generations, the future of work and where people are doing it. Angie O'Grady, Natalie Dehart, and Mildred Antonetti from district offices right here in D.C. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight on a live Zone Primetime.
Thank you so much
for having us.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. I think we solved the debate here, Chris.
Can we just acknowledge 2 quick things? A, excellent job, as always, Tony P. B,
asked a lot of questions.
Look at how I timed that once again.
That was
40 seconds left in the show.
That's why I made it as long as I did. But I'll tell you, it was a lot of great questions. It is important, I think, the whole routine. That's why I do it. That's why I think for younger generations, you need to be in an office.
I desperately need like people and socialization. So
yes,
I never worked
socialize.
from home. When the pandemic hit,
they said it throughout the interview.
Socialize. In the office, and it was the best thing for me. Tony P, we did it again. Thank you.
Sir, thank
Another
you.
Monday night. Thank you to everyone who tuned in on Fox Local or Fox 5 DC's YouTube page. We'll be back tomorrow night, same time, same place. Fox 5 News at 10 is coming up next. Have a great night.